Chosen one, this message didn't find you by accident. God led you here because you need confirmation of something deep your spirit already knows, but your heart has been aching to hear. You were tested in ways most couldn't survive. And you didn't pass with applause. You passed with silence. You didn't pass by proving a point. You passed by staying loyal when it hurt. You didn't pass by skipping pain. You passed through it, with tears streaming down your face and faith still in your chest. Let's walk through this in 7 chapters. Before we go deeper, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because this isn't just another video. This is confirmation from heaven that your silent endurance wasn't in vain. If this word is pulling on your spirit, type 77 in the comments right now. That number isn't random, it's a divine symbol of completion and spiritual graduation. It means you passed, even when no one clapped, even when you had to cry in secret and stay loyal in silence. Not everyone will stay for the whole message. Only the ones who've truly walked through the fire and came out faithful. The ones who understand what it means to trust God when there's no applause. This isn't a message you listened to once. It's a sacred reminder of everything you overcame and why heaven is about to reward you openly. Rewatch it whenever you need to remember who you are, what you survived, and why your next season will be built on what no one saw. But God, you passed the test. Now get ready for the promotion. Let's begin. Chapter 1. God never needed you to announce your innocence. There were moments you sat in rooms where you could feel the energy shift, the quiet stares, the subtle comments, the tension that came from words spoken behind your back. And still, you said nothing. Not because you didn't know what was happening, not because you didn't have the facts, not because you couldn't defend yourself, but because God told you not to. Chosen one, you were placed in situations where everything in you wanted to rise up and explain, to bring clarity, to set the record straight, to expose what really happened. But instead, you were called to do the unthinkable in a world that worships public perception. Remain still, remain silent, remain grounded in faith. This silence wasn't passive, it was prophetic. You were in the middle of a divine exam, one that many fail. The test of whether you would let your pain provoke you or your purpose guide you. Whether you would fight flesh with flesh or stand still and let God be God. You weren't just being tested on your words. You were being tested on your trust. It hurt deeply to be lied on, to be misrepresented, to be left out of conversations about your own story. But what you didn't realize at the time was this: heaven was watching your response more than the situation. Angels were taking notes. God was keeping the receipts. And every time you chose silence over slander, you were passing. Every time you chose prayer over pettiness, you were passing. Every time you cried in private, instead of clapping back in public, you were passing. Not everyone could have held their tongue the way you did. Not everyone could have held their peace with the kind of dignity you displayed. But you did, because you're built different. You were never called to vindicate yourself. You were called to trust in a vindicating God. And that's exactly what you did. You let God write the narrative. You let God prepare the table. And now the time is near, where He will make your innocence undeniable. Not because you fought for it, but because your fruit will speak for you. Your glow will announce what they tried to hide. Your peace will preach louder than their accusations. This wasn't just about proving you were right. This was about proving you were righteous. This was about heaven confirming, this one belongs to me. You didn't fail because you were silent. You passed because you stayed loyal, obedient, and faithful when you had every reason to lash out. And heaven is getting ready to reward that kind of faith. Chapter 2. They tested your loyalty when you were most vulnerable. Chosen one, there's something sacred about being loyal in a season of betrayal, about staying true when your heart is cracked open, your spirit is tired, and your back is against the wall. And yet, you did just that. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. You were tested during a time when you had the least to give, and still, you gave anyway. You showed up for people when no one was showing up for you. You kept their secrets. You prayed for their healing. You believed in their vision. And when it was your turn to lean back, to rest, to be held, silence, abandonment, excuses. There were people who said, "I've got you." But when your storm came, they disappeared like vapor. There were people who claimed to love you, but their actions couldn't survive your lowest valley. You saw who was there when the celebration faded, when the favor lifted, when all you had left was faith and fatigue. And yet, you stayed loyal. You didn't post about them. You didn't expose what you knew. You didn't try to humiliate them the way they humiliated you. You held your peace when you could have burned bridges. You forgave them while your heart was still bleeding. That kind of loyalty is not just rare, it's divine, because your loyalty was not rooted in them. It was rooted in God. Your character wasn't built in comfort. It was refined in the fire. You were never trying to be seen. You were trying to be obedient to what's right, to what's honorable, to what's holy. And God saw every moment of that silent integrity. He saw you choose love when revenge was easier. He saw you choose mercy when wrath was justified. He saw you put your sword down even when your name was dragged through the dirt by people you once defended. That kind of spirit can't be manufactured. It has to be forged. And let's be honest, it hurt. It hurt to be loyal to people who wouldn't even clap for your growth. It hurt to sow into people who never even intended to water your roots. It hurt to carry others in seasons where no one even asked if you were tired, but still, you didn't switch up. And that's exactly why heaven is about to switch your surroundings. The season of one-sided loyalty is coming to an end. The days of emotional poverty are closing. God is replacing those who drained you with people who will pour into you. He's sending covenant connections, loyalty that's mutual, alignment that's sacred. People who won't leave when it's inconvenient. People who won't disappear when you're vulnerable. People who will see your spirit and stay, because now you're being trusted with something greater. You didn't pass this test because you were perfect. You passed it because you didn't let your pain rewrite your identity. You passed it because your loyalty wasn't performance. It was principle. And in a world of shortcuts and fake love, your loyalty is heaven's evidence that you're ready for more. God will always bless what reflects his nature. And loyalty, even when it's not returned, reflects the heart of God. So now, expect the shift. Not just in your circle, but in your elevation. Expect divine replacements. Expect divine rewards. Expect healing where wounds were, restoration where loss was, and clarity where confusion tried to dwell. Because chosen one, they tested your loyalty when you were most vulnerable. But what they didn't realize was that God was testing it too, and you passed. Chapter 3, you were forced to keep walking with tears in your eyes. Chosen one, there's a kind of pain most people will never understand. The pain of walking by faith while your heart is silently breaking. The pain of moving forward with no applause, no answers, and no visible support. But you did it anyway, not because everything made sense, but because something in your spirit refused to quit. There were mornings you didn't want to get out of bed, not because you were lazy, but because your soul was exhausted. There were days when you smiled in public and cried in private. You encouraged others while wondering who would encourage you. You gave when you were empty. You helped others heal, while carrying wounds you hadn't even had time to process. And still, you walked, with tears in your eyes, with unanswered prayers in your mouth, with weight on your back that no one saw. You didn't wait for the pain to pass. You praised through it. You didn't wait for full strength. You crawled when you couldn't walk. You didn't wait for the light. You moved through the darkness by faith, trusting that God would meet you somewhere in the fog. That's not weakness. That's warrior strength. You didn't fake your faith. You fought for it. You didn't pretend it didn't hurt. You trusted God with your hurt. You wrestled in prayer. You pleaded for clarity. You asked God to take it away. And when He didn't, you didn't walk away from Him. You leaned in closer. That kind of faith is rare. The world looks at people like you and assumes you're just strong. But they don't know what it cost you. They don't know the nights you laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the storm would ever end. They don't know how many times you encouraged yourself just to make it through the next hour. But heaven knows, every tear you cried counted. Every heartbreak you endured noted. Every silent moment you kept moving when your mind was screaming to stop. Witnessed by God, your tears didn't fall to the floor. They were caught by the same hands that hold the stars. And now, those same tears are watering something sacred. You didn't realize it then, but every tear was a seed. Every sob was a prophecy. Every breakdown was a birthing room. And what you cried through, you're about to walk into. Because nothing in the kingdom is wasted, especially not pain. God saw you walk when others would have collapsed. He saw you serve when you were secretly suffering. He saw you stay kind when bitterness tried to take root. He saw you stand when the ground under you was shaking. And heaven said, "This one passed the test." You didn't need the perfect conditions. You didn't need constant confirmation. You just needed the quiet assurance that God was still with you. And that was enough. So now, the fruit is coming. Not just reward for what you did, but restoration for what you lost. You will smile without pretending. You will rise without fear of falling again. You will walk into spaces where peace surrounds you and pain no longer defines you. This next season won't require you to fake strength. It will let you rest. It will let you breathe. It will let you finally see what all those tears were building. Because, chosen one, you were forced to keep walking with tears in your eyes. And now, those very tears are watering the garden of your testimony. Harvest is here. Chapter 4. God watched you honor people who dishonored you. Chosen one, let's be honest, there were moments when you had every right to fight back, to call them out, to clap back online, to match their energy with the same disrespect they gave you. But you didn't. And not because you didn't feel the fire rise in you, but because you chose faith over flesh. You were tested in the secret spaces, the kind of test that doesn't come with applause, the test of restraint, the test of spiritual maturity, the test of silent integrity. While others were spreading lies, you were spreading grace. While they mocked you, you kept your mouth shut and your heart clean. You had screenshots. You had the truth. You had the receipts. But God whispered, "Let me handle it." And you listened. They thought your silence was weakness. They thought your kindness was foolishness. But what they didn't realize is that you were operating from a higher realm, a kingdom mindset that doesn't seek revenge but trusts in divine justice. You honored those who dishonored you. You blessed those who blamed you. You supported those who secretly sabotaged you. You prayed for those who slandered you. You covered them when you had the chance to expose them. And while it broke your heart, it never broke your character. That was the real test. Anyone can love those who love them back, but it takes divine strength to honor people who wounded you, to serve with a pure heart when theirs was filled with bitterness, to hold your tongue when your truth could tear down everything they built. But you didn't take the bait. You didn't feed the drama. You didn't let your anointing be pulled into the mud of their accusations. Instead, you rose in silence. You healed in private. You grew without needing to be seen. And that's what made heaven take notice. Because the test wasn't about the betrayal. It was about your response to it. God wanted to know, would you still love when you weren't being loved back? Would you still walk in integrity when your name was being dragged? Would you still choose honor when your ego begged for revenge? And you did. Even while you were bleeding, even while you were breaking, you remained loyal to your divine identity. And that's why your reward won't come from man. It's coming straight from heaven. God is about to prepare a table for you. Not just any table, but one set in the presence of those very same people who thought your silence meant defeat. The ones who whispered about your downfall will now witness your elevation. But don't gloat. Don't become them. Because your promotion isn't about payback. It's about purpose. God didn't keep a record so you could flex. He kept it so he could elevate a heart that stayed pure under pressure. You passed the test of honor. You proved that grace is greater than gossip, that love is louder than lies, that loyalty to God is more important than loyalty to pride. And now, elevation is coming. Not because you shouted your truth, but because you lived it. Not because you demanded respect, but because you gave it when it wasn't returned. Not because you exposed their darkness, but because you stayed lit in the middle of it. God is getting ready to do for you what no revenge ever could. Vindication without violence. Restoration without retaliation. Honor without compromise. Chosen one, you honored people who dishonored you. And now, heaven is about to honor you publicly. Get ready. Chapter 5. You could have taken the shortcut, but you didn't. Chosen one, let's tell the truth. You had options. There were doors you could have walked through that didn't require faith, just flexibility in your morals. There were shortcuts disguised as blessings, temptations that looked like open doors, but in your spirit, you knew. That wasn't the way. You could have taken the easy road. You could have sold the image instead of developing the anointing. You could have played the game, manipulated the outcome, faked the connection, or chased clout instead of calling. And let's be real, it would have worked. You would have gained attention. You would have gained temporary access. You would have gained a platform, but you would have lost your soul. And you knew that. That's why you chose the hard road. The quiet one. The one where the process is long, the nights are silent, and the rewards aren't immediate. You stayed in the fire longer because you refused to forge your crown out of counterfeit metal. While others skipped steps to get results, you stayed planted to grow roots. While some chose exposure, you chose excavation, letting God dig deep instead of letting the world hype you up too soon. That was the real test. Would you rush it? Would you compromise to feel comfort? Would you bend just to be seen? Or would you trust that what God builds slowly, He sustains eternally? And you passed. You chose integrity over image. You chose truth over trends. You chose to grow in silence while others performed for praise. You were overlooked, ignored, counted out. And still, you didn't sell out. You didn't let pressure push you out of purpose. You didn't let the pain make you prideful. You sat in rooms you could have dominated, but you stayed humble. You kept serving. You kept building. You kept sowing in secret, because you understood something they didn't. Anything gained outside of God's timing is a burden, not a blessing. And now, because you waited, because you obeyed, because you refused to manipulate the outcome, heaven is about to release what no man can block. And this blessing, it won't fade. It won't crumble. It won't require performance to maintain. It will be pure, sustainable, and drenched in favor. You didn't skip the line. You stayed in alignment. And now, the reward will not just be for what you gained, but for what you refused to settle for. People won't understand how you got here. They won't see the nights you cried because your path felt slower. The moments you questioned if doing the right thing was even worth it. But God saw every decision. Every time you walked away from the shortcut. Every time you turned down the opportunity that came with compromise. Every time you shut a door that didn't honor your spirit. That was obedience. And obedience always leads to overflow. Not just in your life, but in the lives of everyone connected to your story. Because now, your elevation will have weight. Your success will have substance. Your influence will have integrity. And all of it will be built on a foundation that can't be shaken. Chosen one, you passed the test of character. And now, God is getting ready to release what only integrity could unlock. No shortcuts, no tricks, no schemes. Just favor that follows those who waited well. Get ready. The long way is turning into the right way, and it's leading straight to your promise. Chapter 6. Heaven hid your results for a while, but now they'll be revealed. Chosen one, you've been in a season where it felt like nothing was showing. No results, no recognition, no visible reward. You poured your heart into the assignment, sowed in the spirit, served in silence. And yet, nothing seemed to sprout. You looked around and saw others being celebrated while you remained unseen. But what you didn't know was this: heaven had your results locked in a vault. Because this wasn't an exam of exposure. It was an exam of endurance. God intentionally hid your progress, not to punish you, but to protect what was still maturing. Like a seed buried in the soil, your growth was taking place beneath the surface, hidden, covered, safe. And that frustrated you, because you knew you were growing, you knew you were doing the right things, and still, no fruit, no proof, no evidence. But that's how heaven works with the chosen. God doesn't reveal too soon what still needs strengthening. He didn't want people applauding what wasn't ready. He didn't want you celebrated before you were rooted. So instead of showing off your process, he shielded it. Instead of flaunting your favor, he forged it in the dark. People saw your silence and assumed defeat. They saw your distance and assumed disobedience. They saw your tears and assumed a breakdown. But they never saw the nights you chose prayer over revenge. The days you kept walking even when your heart was tired. The moments you sowed encouragement into others even when you felt empty yourself. And God kept the results covered because he was watching more than what you were doing. He was watching who you were becoming. This wasn't just a test of behavior. It was a test of identity. Could you stay loyal when no one clapped? Could you keep the faith when the numbers didn't move? Could you obey even when the spotlight was turned off? And you did. You passed the hardest parts, the parts where you were judged, overlooked, misread, where people gossiped about your delay, not knowing it was divine protection, where your name was dismissed, not realizing it was being whispered in heaven. But here's the shift. The appointed time has arrived. Heaven is now opening the records. The hidden is about to become seen. The roots are about to produce fruit. The tears are about to turn into testimony. The test results that God kept under seal are about to be made public, and they won't require your voice to explain them. Your obedience will speak. Your elevation will speak. Your fruit will speak. You won't have to clap back. You won't have to prove a thing. The very people who questioned you will witness what God protected in silence. The very environments that doubted you will become the platforms God uses to reveal you. This next season isn't about fighting for visibility. It's about standing still while God makes everything visible. He's preparing a table for you, not behind closed doors, but in the presence of the very spaces that thought your story was over. Chapter 7. This isn't just a passing grade. This is a promotion. Chosen one. Let's make this clear. You didn't just scrape through this exam. You didn't just barely make it. You didn't survive it by chance. You passed it with purpose. What you've endured wasn't meant to keep you down. It was meant to reveal what was inside of you the whole time: strength, obedience, humility, resilience. This wasn't a casual season. This was a proving ground. Heaven wasn't checking your performance. Heaven was measuring your posture. And you passed. You passed the test of silence, when you had every reason to speak but chose reverence instead. You passed the test of loyalty, when betrayal would have made sense, but you stood in integrity. You passed the test of pain, when grief tried to drown you, but your praise still rose. You passed the test of delay, when everything in you wanted to rush ahead, but you waited. You passed the test of rejection, not by fighting for access, but by accepting that God was doing the protecting. Let it sink in. This wasn't just a season of testing. It was a divine evaluation, and the results are in. You didn't just pass the test. You've been promoted. Spiritually, emotionally, prophetically, relationally. You are being lifted into rooms that require purity. You are being assigned to atmospheres that need someone who carries quiet authority. You are being trusted with people who need healing, direction, and truth. Because heaven knows you won't mishandle them. God is not promoting you because of popularity. He's promoting you because of posture. Because when things were unfair, you stayed faithful. When things were unclear, you stayed grounded. When it didn't make sense, you still obeyed. This is not a promotion that comes with applause. This is a promotion that comes with authority. You're not just being elevated, you're being entrusted. God can now trust you with influence that won't corrupt your identity, resources that won't replace your reliance on Him, legacy that isn't built on ego, but on eternal impact, leadership that doesn't dominate, but restores, revelation that doesn't puff up, but pours out. You were never overlooked. You were undergoing observation. You were never forgotten. You were being formed. And now that formation is complete. Your name is about to rise, not because you demanded it, but because God has declared it. You didn't cheat to get here. You didn't manipulate your way into position. You didn't water down your truth to be liked. And because of that, what's coming won't be temporary. It won't be shakeable. It won't be taken away by man, because it was never given by man. This promotion isn't a prize. It's an assignment, and only the tested are qualified to carry it. So get ready. Everything you lost in the fire, God is restoring in the fullness of favor. Every tear that fell in silence, He's turning into wisdom, oil, and overflow. Every night you walked through alone. He's now filling with divine companionship and unshakable peace. And this time, when people ask, "How did you get here?" your answer won't be credentials, connections, or charisma. It'll be one word: God. You passed. You were proven. You were faithful.